Every empire has its belief that it has created a novel form of currency. Yet, as history has shown, every empire ultimately discovers the contrary. This is because money adheres to fundamental principles, deep-rooted and stubborn laws that remain indifferent to political agendas, promises, or naive optimism. These principles are not codified in constitutions nor taught in classrooms. Rather, they have been discovered, forgotten, and rediscovered through centuries marked by financial turmoil. If one remains unaware of these unyielding truths, a constant sense of disillusionment with the system will prevail. Let us delve into the long-forgotten rules governing currency, from the devalued coins of ancient Rome to the digital machinations of contemporary central banks. By examining these phenomena, one will grasp why this economic game has never truly been fair from the outset. The initial recipients of this money can acquire assets and goods at prices that were applicable before the influx of cash, while those who receive it later face inflated costs. The Cantillon effect clarifies why monetary expansion enriches Wall Street while burdening Main Street. It explains how quantitative easing following the 2008 crisis propelled stock markets upward while leaving wages stagnated. Stimulus checks may have disappeared, but they were soon replaced by soaring grocery bills and skyrocketing housing costs. Inflation transcends mere numerical values. It represents a significant redistribution of wealth. Unfortunately for many, they find themselves on the losing side of this equation. The harsh reality is that this system operates as it was designed to do. It directs benefits upward while masking associated costs as mere price increases. Everyday individuals feel as though they are being robbed yet fail to identify the culprit behind their misfortune. The Cantillon effect serves as a hidden mechanism of deception within our contemporary financial framework, functioning since ancient coins were minted. The affluent do not merely earn more. They literally access money in a fundamentally different manner. If the Cantillon effect accounts for the upward flow of new money, then financial repression explains how governments manage to prevent citizens from escaping this cycle. This term emerged after World War II when nations grappled with enormous debts and lacked straightforward solutions for repayment. Raising taxes could incite public uprisings, while defaulting on obligations would undermine trust in institutions. Thus, authorities devised an alternative strategy, ensnaring citizens within a web of systemic control while quietly siphoning off their wealth. Here's how this mechanism unfolded. Central banks artificially maintained low interest rates, often falling below inflation levels, ensuring that any savings held in accounts would steadily lose real value each year. Simultaneously, capital controls limited individuals' abilities to transfer funds abroad or invest in alternative assets. As a result, ordinary citizens found themselves trapped in a cycle of negative returns, while governments continued to inflate their debt burdens. The insidious nature of this financial repression means that individuals are coerced into accepting unfavorable conditions without realizing that they are part of a larger scheme designed to benefit those at the top. The consequences ripple through society as wealth becomes increasingly concentrated among a select few, leaving many grappling with diminished purchasing power and uncertain futures. In essence, what we witness today is not merely an economic phenomenon but rather an intricate dance between policy decisions and societal impacts that perpetuate inequality. This ongoing struggle highlights the urgent need for awareness and understanding surrounding these dynamics if we are ever to break free from their grasp and reclaim agency over our financial destinies. It was a subtle form of taxation, hidden beneath the surface yet gradually corrosive over time. Fast forward to the present day, and the same script unfolds before our eyes. Following the financial collapse of 2008, interest rates plummeted to nearly zero for more than a decade. During this period, savers lost trillions in actual wealth while asset prices soared for those fortunate enough to already own stocks and real estate. From 2020 to 2021, rates dropped once again, leaving ordinary citizens to witness their savings evaporate as housing and food prices surged dramatically. This phenomenon was far from coincidental. It represented a modern iteration of financial repression tailored for the 21st century. The remarkable aspect, from a governmental perspective, is that most citizens remained blissfully unaware of what was transpiring around them. They simply felt an increasing sense of poverty without grasping the underlying reasons behind it. However, these laws of economic manipulation do not solely operate on an individual level. They extend their reach to entire nations and empires as well. This observation leads us to the Triffin paradox, an inherent trap associated with reserve currencies. In the 1960s, Belgian-American economist Robert Triffin testified before the United States Congress, cautioning about fundamental flaws embedded within the Bretton Woods system. He warned that if the US dollar were to become the world's primary reserve currency, America would have to supply a sufficient amount of dollars to facilitate global trade flows. This situation would inevitably result in a trade deficit, spending more abroad than earning domestically, so that other nations could access the liquidity they required. We shall start with the most straightforward yet unforgiving principle, Gresham's law. In the 16th century, Sir Thomas Gresham elucidated this concept to Queen Elizabeth I, stating simply that bad money drives out good. The essence of this principle is quite clear. When two types of currency circulate simultaneously, one reliable and trustworthy while the other is debased, individuals instinctively tend to spend the inferior currency while hoarding the superior one. In the short term, this arrangement appeared effective. Trust in the dollar flourished and international trade expanded significantly. Yet over time, it guaranteed instability within the global financial framework. The more dollars America sent overseas, the weaker its ties to gold became, and consequently, public confidence in that system grew increasingly fragile. Triffin's warnings came true in 1971, when President Richard Nixon abolished the gold standard, transforming the dollar into pure fiat currency. Since then, the United States has grappled with chronic trade deficits while exporting dollars in exchange for foreign-made goods. Factories have shuttered their doors, debts have piled up relentlessly, yet dollar dominance has managed to keep this precarious balancing act afloat. The paradox is harsh. In order for America to maintain its status as a global reserve currency, it must sacrifice the health of its own economy. This economic law ensures stagnation and decline. The repercussions are evident all around us today. The United States consumes far more than it produces while sustaining itself through endless borrowing practices. While dollar dominance continues to support Wall Street's operations and profits, it simultaneously drains resources from Main Street communities across the nation. As we look towards the horizon now, new competitors are emerging on this global stage. These rising powers threaten to challenge America's long-standing supremacy in international finance and trade dynamics. As these shifts unfold, they will undoubtedly reshape our understanding of economic stability and power distribution worldwide. China, Russia, and the BRICS bloc are actively exploring alternatives to the existing financial system. Central banks around the world are accumulating gold at an unprecedented pace, the fastest seen in over half a century. The once unassailable power of the United States, derived from its reserve currency status, now seems to be sowing the seeds of its own decline. This phenomenon relates to what is known as Triffin's paradox. The reserve currency serves both as a crown of dominance and a curse that can lead to instability. Triffin's paradox illustrates the precarious position of the global monetary system, while Goodhart's law sheds light on why attempts to manage the system often exacerbate underlying issues. In the 1970s, economist Charles Goodhart made a critical observation that, while simple, carries profound implications. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to function effectively as a measure. Governments and central banks are particularly enamored with statistics: 2% inflation rates, 5% unemployment, 3% GDP growth. These metrics are intended to reflect economic realities. However, once policymakers prioritize achieving these targets at any cost, they risk distorting the very systems they aim to regulate. Take inflation targeting as an example. For decades, central banks have committed to maintaining inflation around 2%, a seemingly reasonable goal. Yet in their pursuit of this objective, they have manipulated interest rates, injected liquidity into markets, and inflated asset bubbles. While official reports may indicate low inflation figures on paper, in reality, costs for housing, healthcare, and education have soared at much higher rates. The statistics suggest stability. Everyday experiences reveal a starkly different truth marked by volatility and uncertainty. Similarly, GDP has become a revered metric of national progress for politicians. However, when growth itself turns into an end goal rather than a means to enhance well-being, governments resort to accumulating debt, outsourcing production overseas, and inflating numbers just to sustain growth rates. This practice gives rise to an illusion of prosperity that coexists with an underlying reality of fragility and instability. Goodhart's law exposes this trap. By focusing on managing numerical indicators instead of seeking genuine truths about economic health and societal welfare, we lose sight of what truly matters. As we delve deeper into economic dynamics, we encounter another critical principle: the law of diminishing returns regarding debt. This concept is neither ancient nor polished but represents a harsh arithmetic reality that we face today. In the initial stages of expansionary growth, borrowing can drive significant increases in GDP. $1 borrowed could yield $1 or even more in economic output. However, as debt continues to mount over time, the returns diminish sharply. A single dollar of newly incurred debt might only generate 50 cents worth of growth initially. Then it might fall to 25 cents or even less over time. Ultimately, while debt levels keep rising relentlessly, real growth stagnates or declines altogether. The engine that was once accelerating now struggles under its own weight. Consider ancient Rome as an illustrative example. As silver denarii gradually became diluted with base metals, citizens were far from naive. They paid their taxes and settled debts using these newly minted worthless coins while safeguarding their older, purer silver pieces. A similar scenario unfolded throughout medieval Europe when monarchs resorted to clipping coins or substituting gold with copper in their currency systems. Currently, we find ourselves entrenched in this troubling stage where United States debt has surpassed $30 trillion. Each new loan taken out seems to deliver increasingly less genuine wealth creation. As we navigate these turbulent waters marked by soaring debts and stifled growth potential, it becomes evident that our financial architecture needs reevaluation if we are ever to break free from these constraints and foster true economic vitality once more. Instead, he propped up financial markets, funded social programs, and maintained a facade of stability. However, the harsh reality of mathematics does not lie. Saturation with debt is an inevitable destination for every empire. The Romans resorted to devaluing their currency whenever economic growth began to falter. The French monarchy had already buried itself in debt long before the events of 1789. The British Empire struggled under the weight of its obligations after two devastating world wars. Now, the United States finds itself confronting a similar reckoning. The law is unyielding. Borrowing merely buys time rather than preventing inevitable consequences. What do these principles teach us as we retreat into our own thoughts? Money is not a mystical force. It operates under rules as unforgiving as the laws of gravity. Poor currencies will ultimately drive out good ones until a collapse occurs. Economic crises compel individuals to seek out reliable assets for security. Newly minted money enriches a select few before it trickles down to the masses, if at all. Governments often suppress their citizens in order to quietly write off debts that have become untenable. Reserve currencies tend to deplete themselves over time, leading to further instability. The objectives behind monetary policies can distort the truth in profound ways. Ultimately, debt consumes itself, leading nations into cycles of despair. These long-forgotten laws governing money are far from mere academic curiosities. They serve as vital survival rules in our modern world. They elucidate why inflation robs investors blind, why salaries lag behind rising costs, why mortgages feel increasingly burdensome while Wall Street seems to reach new heights daily, and how countries thrive on trust yet crumble under the weight of their debts. None of this should be interpreted as random occurrences. They form a consistent rhythm throughout financial history. The most brutal truth remains: the game was never designed for your victory. Ordinary citizens navigate life in transparency while elites operate within a shroud of secrecy and privilege. You submit tax returns while they shuffle assets behind closed doors. You receive salaries that barely keep pace with inflation while they enjoy first dibs on burgeoning profits. While you hold cash that steadily loses value, they possess appreciating assets that continue to grow. The system adheres to its own stringent laws. Until you familiarize yourself with them, you will always be playing blindfolded. History does not repeat itself verbatim. However, money obeys certain immutable laws that remain constant through time. If you fail to grasp these fundamental truths, you risk being crushed by them in the end. Understanding these dynamics can open new avenues of insight and perspective on our current financial landscape. History holds valuable lessons within its pages, offering guidance on navigating these turbulent waters, if only one knows where to look for answers amidst the chaos that surrounds us today. The lesson here is profound. When authorities attempt to deceive their populace by devaluing currency, people adapt accordingly. They spend counterfeit money but save genuine assets. Once this cycle begins, trust in currency erodes rapidly. However, there exists a second principle that acts almost like an evil twin to Gresham's law, known as Tyre's law. Named after Adolphe Thiers, a 19th-century French politician, this law asserts that during periods of acute crisis, logic undergoes a complete reversal. In times of financial disaster, good money actually drives out bad money. Imagine Weimar Germany in the tumultuous 1920s, a nation grappling with hyperinflation where prices doubled every few days and wheelbarrows full of banknotes became necessary just to purchase loaves of bread. In such dire circumstances, no one wished to hold on to marks for even a fleeting moment longer than absolutely necessary. People frantically sought refuge in dollars, gold, cigarettes, or engaged in barter, anything that retained real value. A similar pattern emerged in Zimbabwe and Venezuela amid numerous hyperinflationary episodes observed throughout history. Tyre's law encapsulates those critical moments when confidence wanes entirely and individuals completely reject state-issued promises regarding currency value. While Gresham details the gradual decay of monetary systems over time, Tyre illustrates their abrupt demise during crises. Understanding these laws provides invaluable insights into how societies behave in relation to currency and why true stability often eludes governments attempting to manipulate monetary value for their own benefit. As we continue exploring these intricate dynamics surrounding money's evolution across various cultures and epochs, it becomes evident that recognizing these patterns may offer crucial lessons for navigating present-day economic challenges. What transpires in the gray area between gradual decline and complete collapse? This is where the Cantillon effect comes into play, a principle that elucidates why inflation consistently feels inequitable. Richard Cantillon, an Irish-French economist from the early 18th century, made a notable observation. When new currency enters the economy, its impact is not uniformly distributed among all participants. Those positioned closest to the source, governments, financial institutions, and the elite, are the first to spend it. By the time these funds trickle down to workers and savers, prices have already surged.